Are you aware? 6 extremely major big ports have received tens of billions of dollars in Chinese investment. And there are several nations where these ports are located. But they will give the United States much greater concern because, once these 6 major ports are finished, they may be able to assist China lift its economic embargo imposed by the United States and perhaps alter the country's historic maritime trading patterns. Are you aware of the nations these 6 ports are in? First, paddle a kayak to your port. For China's marine trade, the Strait of Malacca is crucial. The Strait of Malacca is required to be used for more than 80% of all energy and commodity imports. Yet, China would also be concerned if the Strait of Malacca is used too frequently. China will experience a severe economic catastrophe after the United States blocks the Strait of Malacca. China has developed positive diplomatic ties with Myanmar and has furthermore assisted Myanmar in developing a significant amount of infrastructure in an effort to open up energy lines between China and the Indian Ocean. China made the decision to invest $7.8 billion in 2015 to develop the Kayapo port in Myanmar. The Myanmar government leased the Kayapo port to China for 99 years when it first opened for business. At the same time, Chinese firms own 70% of the port's shares, while Myanmar firms own the remaining 30%. Moreover, China has invested in building oil and gas pipelines from the unassuming port to Yunnan, China. With the protection of Myanmar's ports and oil pipelines, it is anticipated that the Kayapo port and the oil pipeline would be finished by 2023. In reality, these infrastructures not only help China's import commerce avoid many problems, but they also lessen the chance that China's energy supply chain would be disrupted. Indeed, KP, a port is a crucial opening for China's international waters. It is certain that the silent bioport in Myanmar will effectively defend the Chinese and Myanmarese economy over the course of the next 10 years. Water port is the second. In Pakistan's southwest is where you'll find Gwadar Port. It started off as a modest fishing community on the Arabian Sea coast. China has chosen to assist Pakistan in developing the Gwadar Port in order to better promote the China-Pakistan economic corridor and open up new trade routes and coastal ports. In actuality, the port's development cost was $248 million, of which China invested $198 million in Pakistan and $50 million in 2005. The Gwadar Port project's initial phase is now complete. Singapore Air has now made investments in the Gwadar Port as well. Yet the Gwadar Port was previously in debt because Singapore mismanaged the project's second phase. Finally, China seized control of the Gwadar Port. With China's takeover, the port effectively performed the inland economic radiation function of Gwadar Port. The journey for China to buy oil has grown shorter since the Gwadar Port is closer to oil-producing nations like the Middle East, even if competitor nations attempt to restrain China's commerce in energy. Nonetheless, China is free to select safer trading channels. China's trade in the Indian Ocean is protected by the Gwadar Port. The third is Port of Suez. The Suez Canal has long been a vital waterway connecting Asia and Europe. More than 20,000 ships have sailed through the Suez Canal annually since it first opened in 1967. China and Egypt actively uphold cordial ties in order to implement the maritime Silk Road of the 21st century that China has suggested. China's maritime commerce ships need the Port of Suez for refueling or loading and unloading since Egypt lacks the ability to enlarge the Port of Suez. China offered a plan to develop and rent the Port of Suez in 2008. As the port's expansion was put to use, it had a significant economic impact on Egypt and China. The zone of China and Egypt's international commercial cooperation generated more than $55 million in output annually in 2012. China raised its investment in the Port of Suez in 2014, and the port's area continued to grow. The port of Hambantota is the fourth. Notwithstanding the blockade by Western nations, Sri Lanka has consistently maintained a positive relationship with China. Even while its economy was expanding quickly, China continued to work with Sri Lanka. In 2007, China made an official investment in the expansion of the Hambantota port, and in exchange, the government of Sri Lanka committed to working with China for the next 99 years. At the time, the Hambantota port was Sri Lanka's most ambitious construction project. Even the port of Hambantota, which had been under development for many years, was ultimately put into action. At the beginning, there were only around 300 ships sailing each day. Despite this, Chinese companies continued to pay $1.12 billion to acquire 70% of the port and to lease the other 30% for a period of 99 years. The port of Hambantota has been operational for a considerable amount of time and has developed into an important transit site for China's maritime trade. On average, 10 ships arrive at the port of Hambantota per hour to replenish their supplies. This region will serve as a point of transit for more than 30% of all shipments that include bulk goods, 50% of all shipments in containers for loading and unloading, and 60% of all shipments of oil en route to China. The fifth most important port is Piraeus. The Chinese government pledged 4.3 billion euros to purchase a 67% stake in the port of Piraeus, which would open up the market to European countries. As a direct consequence of the ongoing economic crisis, the port of Piraeus has sustained significant damage. The majority of the surviving machinery is too old to use and must be abandoned at a later date. The only remaining equipment that may be used is comprised of 4 cranes and 2 cargo ships. The port in China underwent extensive renovations, and a brand new terminal was built. What is China's motivation for acting in this manner? Because the port of Piraeus acts as a crossroads for ships traveling between the 3 continents that make up Europe, both in Asia and Africa. China has developed a fondness for the good geographical location of this port as a result of its access to the Mediterranean Sea via the Suez Canal. In this location, the Chinese Navy is able to transship a large number of containers, and the port of Piraeus is able to effectively radiate the all of Europe. The volume of cargo that passed through the port of Piraeus in 2022 has significantly grown, according to the statistics. Soon, the port of Piraeus will take its place as the 9th-ranked international shipping center in the world. Piraeus is poised to become the largest port in the Mediterranean in the near future. The 6th most important port is Djibouti Port. When it comes to ensuring the safety of any marine trade, the protection of the army is absolutely necessary. To aid in the fight against pirates operating out of Somalia, China made an investment of $185 million in the year 2013 to buy a 23.5% stake in the port of Djibouti. In 2014, the major duty of the port will be to provide the Chinese escort with training and supplies. China began construction of the multifunctional ports of Diu and Raj in Djibouti in less than 3 years from the commencement of the development process. In May of 2017, the flexible port of Dakhili Ai was put into service for the first time. The port in Djibouti provided more than half of the supplies for the Chinese convoy that was traveling through Africa. At this time, China is making significant investments in the expansion of maritime trade and the construction of infrastructure in other countries. From our current vantage point, China's import and export trade will not be limited to the Straits of Malacca, and foreign ports will become significant hubs linking new routes. As a result, the attempts of the West and other nations to curb China's development are highly unlikely to be successful. Share your opinion in comments. Also, click on this video to watch about another shocking project.